The Winnipeg Jets might sink or swim this year, and it's going to come down to how their skaters perform. And on tonight's episode, we're going to dive into some season previews for some of Winnipeg's most important players who can either help carry this team to glory or send them down to the bottom of the standings on tonight's episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets.
You're Locked On the Hockey Jets, your daily podcast on the Winnipeg Jets. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, friends, and welcome to tonight's episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Harrison Lee, and I'm a Winnipeg Jets fan and an online blogger. You can follow me on Twitter at HLivingLoco and at LO_Winnipeg Jets. As always, we really love and appreciate you liking us, following us, and subscribing to us on all of your favorite podcasting platforms, including YouTube, and also the fact that you make us your first listen of the day. We just really love and appreciate your support, and, you know, while it is free to subscribe, more than anything, we just appreciate that you are giving us your hard-earned time. Today's episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jase case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat over 50 kinds of infections. Get yours today at jasemedical.com. That's J-A-S-E medical.com. Now, like I said, tonight's episode, we're talking about the players who can make the Jets sink or swim. And, the last episode, we kind of ended off with Mark Scheifele and Gabriel Vilardi. This time, I want to take a little bit of a different approach. I kind of want to, talk more about categories of players and talk about the archetypes that this team has, because Winnipeg has a very interesting mixture this year. I feel like I'm still trying to piece together how this roster is going to look and how they're going to arrange things, because for once, the Jets actually have a pretty veritable plethora of options. If you've ever watched, The Three Amigos, having a plethora is always a nice thing to have. It's a wonderful bounty of scoring ability. And with this team, the Jets actually have a plethora of options, especially when it comes to line combos. But let's kind of revisit Scheifele a little bit, because he is, honestly, he's probably our best overall offensive threat. He's not the absolute most impactful and best player on the team. That honor still kind of, is owed to Nikolai Ehlers, who we'll talk about later this episode. But when it comes to the complete offensive package, whether it's space creation, shot threat, elite release, natural scoring instincts, everything that makes Scheifele a number one center, there's just no one else on the team that really brings all of those traits together the way that he does. And look, I've been frustrated with him over the years, but like I've said in previous episodes, as much as he drives me crazy, it's because I know what he's capable of. The guy can be almost unstoppable when he feels like it. I mean, he is, a guy who was selected for Team North America on the virtue of some of his past exploits, and he really deserved to be on that team. The guy was a phenomenal player at one point, probably still is if he's motivated and believes in the vision of the team enough to actually follow through with it. Mark, I've had my issues with him over the year. I'm not going to lie and say that there aren't parts of his game that haven't frustrated me. But at the end of the day, when it comes to guys that I trust almost implicitly to be Winnipeg's torchbearers of offense, he's pretty much at or near the top of the list. You look at his career over the past couple of years, and while he hasn't yet crested the 100-point mark, and, last year he actually had a bit of a dip, only 68 points, relatively speaking, that's probably a little bit lower than you'd probably expect from him. You look at the goal totals, and that really jumps off the page. He had a career high 42, and it feels like if the assists kind of start to rack up a little bit with a team that's going to have more finishing talent this year, maybe he actually starts getting closer and closer to that 100-point mark. I really feel like he's capable of it. I feel like if this power play stops sucking, we're going to see a huge increase in his production. And with the new talent that he's going to have at his disposal, I just continue to believe that his finishing this year is going to be lights out, that he's going to be racking up assists left and right, and that this is going to be the Mark Scheifele season. And again, I guess it depends on if he stays with the Jets or not. I mean, that's a really legitimate question. I still don't know what the best long-term plan with him is. I feel like it probably involves him leaving, but I'm not super eager for that moment. All frustrations aside, the last thing that I think Winnipeg if they're trying to be competitive, the last thing that they can really afford is to have Scheifele just go away. No matter who you get in return, you're just not going to get somebody who is as skilled and as good as he is at scoring. No matter what you say about his defensive game, no one can deny that offensively he is extraordinarily gifted, and very clearly one of the best players on the Jets when it comes to that sort of stuff. Now, he's not the only natural finisher. There is another guy on the team who traditionally has been an offensive monster, and he's actually gotten closer than most of the other players on this team to 100 points. That guy, of course, is Kyle Connor. And Kyle, it's weird because last year he had a down year by his standards, and he still had 80 points. The thing that has always kind of been strange with KFC is that he is an elite scorer. There is zero question about that. When it comes to finishers on this team and players who have the one-on-one matchup ability to break down almost any single defender in the league, Kyle Connor is genuinely a top 5 kind of scorer, especially in those one-on-one situations. He has the shiftiness, the elusiveness, the kind of stick handling, the skating, and honestly, what I'll call the greasiness to actually get by opponents. And, it's almost the sort of thing that you associate with like a McDavid, or maybe if you've seen the video highlights of Kovalchuk circulating on Twitter, similar kind of stuff. Like, he just has this ability to pivot, shift his weight, sort of blow by defenders, get that inside step, and then he's gone. And then you have him married to, quite honestly, one of the most fearsome releases in the entire NHL. Where KFC has kind of struggled is sort of the stuff that happens when you're not touching the puck. And even when he's been in possession, it's been an issue. This year, I feel like we're going to see him punish pucks again. I think it wouldn't be inconceivable that if he has a roughly full season, maybe he hits 50 goals. I think what we're really missing from the Jets this year is an elite power play. But if they make the right personnel adjustments, if they make the right tactical adjustments, this power play might go from being at or near the bottom of the league to just about the top. They have enough scoring talent to be lethal. They have amazing finishers. Kyle and Mark should be 2 of your best goal-scoring threats on the team. And if they have a special teams unit that can actually make use of that actually gets goalies shifting from side to side and exposes their weaker parts, this is a team that could really rake in the points. Mark could. I think Kyle is certainly a candidate for that. He had 80 points last year in a season that I would call a down year. And obviously, he's had really successful seasons recently. He's been at or over a point per game for most of the last 4 years. The only times that things have kind of taken a dip are either when we had the weird bubble season, or he misses a few games and he doesn't have, the scoring rate to get over like the 80-point mark. But when he's been healthy and he's played most of a full season, especially like the last 2 years, he's almost been, a point per game. And the previous season, he was well over that. So I feel like this year he could hit 50 goals if we're really, really fortunate. I'd say 40 to 45 is probably where we're going to really see him top off at. I mean, it is a pretty crazy milestone to hit 47. He had a monster season in 21-22. I guess the biggest question is, now that there's a lot more support and guys who can open up space for him, is that going to have a huge impact on his performance? Funny enough, like for a bad power play, he still had like 28, 29 points over the last couple of seasons. So we'll see if he's able to tick those numbers up this year with Velarde, Perfetti back, hopefully, and all those kinds of guys. I just feel like this should be a special teams unit that clicks and gives KFC the space he needs to do what he does best, and that's shooting the puck from really, really, really dangerous spots. So obviously, he and Scheifele are 2 of our best creators, but what about, or 2 of our best scorers and creators, but what about most like pure creators, the players who might not throw pucks into the back of the net, but who are the ones dishing out those amazing assists? We'll dive into some expectations for those players in just a little bit. Before we go any further, though, I do want to shout out our friends and partners at Jase Medical. The Jase case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use. For those of you who are on the go and do a lot of traveling, or maybe you just want to have a case around you in times of crisis, whether it's a national emergency like from weather, inclement weather, some power outages, all that kind of fun stuff. You don't want to be caught with your pants down. You want something that's really convenient, really easy, and very much on hand. And that's why Jase Medical has a great option for you. They believe that everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. That's why they've got the Jase case. It comes with 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use that helps give you peace of mind that you can treat over 50 kinds of infections. And best of all, they handle everything from the online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medications, and they also offer ongoing consultation and care. So don't get caught unprepared. Save more than $360 by getting these life-saving antibiotics with Jase Medical, plus an additional $20 off by using code LOCKEDON at checkout at jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com, and be sure to use promo code LOCKEDON. Hello, friends, and welcome back to this episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Everydayers, thank you so much for joining us in tonight's episode as we are talking about some player previews, some guys who I feel are primed for big years this year. Obviously, Winnipeg has a number of new faces, a number of new scorers, and with that comes new expectations. I would say that I have some uncertainty over this season for a couple of reasons. Obviously, Scheifele and Hellebuck situation, that remains to be seen. But some of the other uncertainty comes from having some questions about how the Jets are going to arrange this lineup, because Winnipeg has a much deeper forward grouping now than it's had in previous seasons, and whether Bones is good enough to take that group to another level is kind of a question I do have. Now, in terms of like goal scorers, we talked about Scheifele, we talked about Velarde to an extent in previous episodes, and we talked about Kyle Connor. Who's going to be dishing those players? Well, I think the first name that is obviously going to be on just about everyone's lips, and who are all kind of waiting to really see blossom, is Cole Perfetti. Perfetti had like 30 points last year in a shortened season where he missed almost a third of the year thanks to some pretty nasty upper body injuries. It was really unfortunate. I think he even had surgery. He was kind of on pace to have like a Calder candidate season. If you prorated his current scoring rate, he'd probably be closer to like 45 or 50 at the end of the year, which for what amounts to just his second season in the NHL, and quite honestly, it's still pretty early for him, having only played a total of like 69 games. That's pretty darn good. You're racking up almost around a little over a point per game. He had 30 points in 51. That's very respectable. If he had played the full season, maybe he would have gotten even closer to like, I don't know, 50-ish. It'd be nice if he was in that range, even with, poor special teams where he wasn't really a factor on the power play and didn't get a ton of time there. He still found a way to make a noticeable impact on this team. And if you actually look at the underlying defensive metrics for Perfetti, he was really strong there. But where I think he stands to make the most impact this year is in that passing and vision, right? This guy has like eyes in the back of his head. I've never seen a player on this team who has the vision, the creativity, and the passing ability to do the stuff that Perfetti does. Honestly, he could probably be like an amazing football player in Europe if he had chosen that sport instead, because his understanding of space and his ability to see scoring opportunities that most other players wouldn't even think to attempt, it separates him from everyone else. And that's why this year I'm really kind of marking this as the Perfetti year. This will be like, I would say his second full-length season, because he only played 18 games in the first year. And so, last year he was still a rookie. This year, that status is gone, but he's going to be essentially a newborn player by all, for all intents and purposes. He hasn't even played a full 82 yet. So if he can stay healthy, if he can have a big year, this is a season where Perfetti might honestly dish out like, 60 points worth of damage. And you could say that probably 45 of those or so are going to be assists, because I haven't really seen the goal scoring part of his game blossom yet. That, I think, is the one thing where I do wonder if Cole is maybe not going to be as prolific a goal scorer as we thought. I still think he is going to be. I think he's going to have a pretty successful year. Even if he only notches 20 goals, he's going to have so many points from being an amazing passer that I don't really worry about it too much. And the most important thing is that he's going to be facilitating play and keeping the puck moving to dangerous areas. That's what he does best. That's what I expect him to do. And I'm really excited to see how he handles a longer season where he doesn't get sidelined by a very serious injury. For me, Perfetti is one of our most intriguing talents. He's one of our most exciting players. And as of yet, I think we still haven't seen his very best. So be excited this year. I think Perfetti is bound to have a big season. Another guy who should have, certainly should have a big season, if he stays healthy, that is Nikolai Ehlers. Ehlers has kind of been hovering around a point per game for the past couple of years. Some seasons, thanks to injuries and stuff, he hasn't been able to really, fully realize that. I think in last season, where he only played around half the games, a little over half, it was disappointing that he got sidelined for a significant chunk of time. And when you look at the overall health pattern for Ehlers over the last 3 to 4 years, it's not great. He's only had one season where he's gone over 70 games, and that was in 1920. He hasn't played anywhere near that since then. So for me, this is a tough one, because when it comes to creative players and guys on this team who are the best at it, Ehlers is at the top. The guy is almost effortless at transition, creation, perimeter play, whatever you need him to do, whether it's attacking the slot, attacking from the faceoff circles, attacking from distance. I mean, the guy just freaking does it all. So the fact that he has had seasons where he's played only 40 odd games is a criminal shame. If he honestly needs more shifts, more time, you really can't have too much of Ehlers. And it's unfortunate that his body hasn't kept up with it, because if he had stayed healthy, I mean, it wouldn't have been crazy to imagine him hitting 70 to 80 points in a season, right? He just is that kind of player. And hopefully, if he gets more ice time and more power play time this year, it'd be nice if he could actually, have the production levels in the box scores to match the skill level that he displays on a routine basis. I think this could be a big year for him. It would just be nice if he stays healthy. That's been his Achilles heel, and it's gotten worse over the past couple of years. The first few seasons, he didn't really have nearly as many injuries, but it's definitely been a problem over the past couple of seasons. So cross your fingers for Ehlers to stay healthy. It'd be nice if we got a full year out of him. I know it's not realistic, but at least more than 40 games, please. I am begging the hockey gods to grant me that wish. Now, we've talked a lot about forwards. In just a few moments, I also want to spotlight some defenders, because these guys are the ones who are going to be getting a lot of grief this year. I'm going to be honest. I think this year's Jets defense, it's going to be okay. It's not going to be awful, but it's just going to be okay. And we're going to talk about two of the highest scoring defenders on this team, and why they kind of represent two opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of productivity. Hello, friends, and welcome back to this episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, everydayers. Thank you for joining us in these closing thoughts of tonight's episode as we talk about season expectations for some of our top players, and in particular, some of our top scorers. Now, we talked about some pure goal scorers, some more creative types. Let's focus on some of our more offensively gifted blue liners. Let's start off with Neil Pionk, who might be one of the most controversial defenders on this team. Pionk is kind of an interesting one, because actually, when I'm looking at his scoring record, it's actually not nearly as good as I thought it was. Traditionally, Pionk has been one of those guys who looks really offensively gifted and does a lot of the things to create good scoring opportunities, especially on the power play and stuff, to where you'd think he'd actually be closer to like 60 or 70 points a season. But for the most part, he's actually kind of hovered around second pairing production. And that's generally been my experience with him, is that he's kind of like a second pairing-ish guy. But the problem with Pionk is that his defensive work over the past couple of years has really started to tail off. Ever since the bubble season, we've seen him go back to where he was when he was with the Rangers. And that is kind of bad news for the Jets, because he's being paid almost $6 million a season, and Winnipeg just frankly needs more out of him. He's a very, very respected player in the room. It seems like he's very accountable. He'll call himself out at times, and, sometimes I feel like he's a little hard on himself. But I do agree that, this year we need him to really step up. And it'd be nice if those point totals go up, because that's kind of one of the big things that you get with him is a strong release and some pretty good passing. The problem is that, under pressure, he'll turn the puck over. He misses defensive reads a lot. And so you have to have him involved in the offense because that's where he's going to do the most damage. But like I said, the kind of offense that he creates, it's not as impactful as, I would like it to be. It's not a Josh Morrissey. And that's kind of where Morrissey really takes the cake, especially last year. He had a monster season, almost a point per game, 76, which I think no one in their right mind really expected. His career high was 37 the year before. And under Bones, he just really took off and started looking more like his Prince Albert days, which is awesome for the Jets because now Winnipeg basically has their stud number one attacking defender. And it's not just in box scores. The dude legitimately contributed in all facets of offensive creation. The scoring chances ticked up by a pretty decent amount. Winnipeg's goal scoring with him on the ice improved. He's just an amazing player, and it's wild to see that it's taken this long for him to kind of catch up to his reputation thanks to how he was used in previous years. This is a guy who apparently had these tools the whole time and could have just used them, but because of the more conservative approach that a lot of the previous coaching regimes had, Morrissey just never really blossomed. And so now we're seeing the fruits of the first season under Bones. And while I'm not sure that he's going to have 76 points again this year, I still think 60 is very achievable. But based on how he created his points last year, it's tough, right? Because I think he probably had a pretty inflated shooting percentage. That is something that's not really replicable under most circumstances. When you have a bit of a shooting spike, that usually does kind of tick back down at some point. It doesn't have to happen the next season, but you usually do see that. And Josh was finishing closer to 10%, which for him is very high, especially considering the position that he plays. Maybe he can do it again this year. I don't know. A lot of his production also came on the power play, but I mean, he's doing so much else at even strength that I don't really worry about any of that stuff. I think we know for a fact that he's a huge difference maker at even strength on the power play, all situations, whatever you want out of him, he's going to do. And so I expect another year of at least top pairing points production. I think he's going to have 60. I might even venture to guess that he could hit 80 this year, 80 plus. It wouldn't be shocking. I do think it might be a little bit challenging just because, maybe this team is going to have more forwards who are kind of hogging the scoring, but we'll see. I'm excited for him. I really hope that he is able to have a strong season, even though I am disappointed he didn't get the captaincy. I'm still happy to see him. I'm sure he's thrilled to have another strong year under his belt. Let's just hope that he stays healthy, that he continues to be the great on-ice and off-ice leader that he is, and that he, really cements the fact that Winnipeg now has their number one defender that they've been looking for. They just need to find him a good partner to dance with. But let me know what you think of these season predictions so far. Give me your thoughts on each of these skaters in the comments below or at my social medias at HLivingLoco and at LO_Winnipeg Jets. For tonight's show, though, that is going to be all the time that we have. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jets your first listen of the day, every day. Every day, as we will see you back here tomorrow for even more Jets content. So like, subscribe, follow, and as always, have a great night and go Jets, go.